Welcome back here with Dr. Goldberg. Today I wanted to talk about this very common cop-out people will employ if they want to avoid a difficult issue. In the past, it might have been you were around someone you liked and they were a liberal, and so you would just not try to deal with the particular situation. So it's like, it doesn't affect me, therefore I don't care. That's the tagline. And that's cute, it's clever, but we're not going to let anyone get away with it because, of course, your actions have major ramifications for those around you, and sometimes others far removed from where you happen to be. A good example to hone in on would be gay rights. So people would go, "Why do you care if they're gay? It's none of your business." Yeah, to be honest, if, Matonde and Tyrone and Brady want to proclamate their emancipation from homophobic people, I really don't care. The only issue is if they're not using safe practices and they get a disease and they don't have insurance, they can't pay for it, they dump it on the healthcare system, you end up subsidizing that in some way through your premiums and your copays, your deductibles, whatever. It's the great myth of a private insurance industry where people think, oh yeah, you only pay for what you need. Bull crap, not true at all. Okay, and I'll be talking about that in a later segment. You end up subsidizing other people's bad decisions regardless of the system. Now, blending that with other mainstream issues, you take immigration, like job displacement by migrants, legal or illegal. I make more money than most immigrants unless they're like a heart surgeon. I'm not really in an industry that I'm threatened by that sort of progress, but that does not mean that I'm in support of it because I don't care, because it has impacted the lives of other people. You ask the Hormel meat plant workers who were forced to take like a 25% pay cut, and then on top of that they had essentially they were being ethnically cleansed from the workforce on the basis that, quote unquote, the Hispanics don't ask for raises or breaks. Just shows you the banality of corporate malevolence when it comes to their treatment of workers. And that's why the older I get, the more experience I've had with corporations. I'm not really a true believer in that. Just let them do what they want, because I see so many examples of dedicated workers who are thrown to the gutter because they're just too costly to maintain, no matter how much they've given to that particular firm. Then you consider stuff like if you try to soft pill individuals on chemicals in our water supply or how our food is prepared. What is one of the first things the smug boomer or moomer response you'll get almost every time? It's almost guaranteed, I tell you. They go, "I've been having that stuff for years. I don't have a problem." It's like, well, first of all, if you haven't researched it, you may not even know that a condition or an issue you have is tied to those first prime factors. But even if you don't, should we maintain the status quo, which could be impacting other people's lives just because it doesn't bother you specifically? You look at stuff like lead poisoning. People had to lead the charge on that. There were the folks who said, maintain the status quo, don't rock the boat, it's not a big deal, it's not impacting me. And those are the people who impede progress. And progress is not always a bad thing. It's not progressivism per se, it's just we learn something, we evolve more, we solve a problem. It's not necessarily an evil that exists. And of course, with the environment in general, you try to explain to people why certain issues need to be addressed, and they'll just try to do this total dismissal. So it's like, how many people do you see burning up because of the sun? Seems pretty chilly outside. And that means that pollution's no longer an issue. That means that pollution in China or in parts of the United States or India, whatever, it's not a problem because you can just make this stupid, broad-based dismissal. Just let the market do what it wants. Well, no, this is a serious problem. It's having environmental impacts. It's destroying certain areas. It is, in certain cases, actually negatively affecting people's lives, depending on where they're located. And you're just trying to say it's not a big deal because it doesn't impact you on a day-to-day basis. It's such a low IQ position, and I think it explains why so many of our representatives are low IQ. They're people who barely, struggled through law school, got into politics, and they're a career politician. They're not interested in the future. They're not interested in predicting or getting ahead of things. They just want to do whatever's good for the moment, and that's why they defend practices and industries that are like long past the shelf life, due date, because it's just convenient for them, right? And finally, we're going to get to this one. This came out on Hufflepuff in the wake of COVID-19. And I like it's just a great kind of sort of summary of how these live and let die people operate and how ridiculous their ideas are. So, the title is, I'm a parent making porn to make ends meet during COVID quarantine. She's been a stripper for the last 11 years, and she's dabbled in webcam and porn making. The pandemic took everyone by surprise, cut off her income. In this COVID time, I'm relying entirely on digital work, such as live cam, or live webcam solo and partnered sex videos, selling fetish videos, and sexting for tips. Co-parenting allows her to shoot porn when the daughter is at the dad's house, but the juggle is real. I'm answering emails and sexting for tips long into the night after tucking my kid into bed. Sometimes I'm able to send pics and chat with customers from the tub while she reads from her room. Does her family know what you do? She says, what my daughter knows about mommy's work is context appropriate for her age. She's 8, so just so you know, she had this kid, she was already at least a stripper, from what she says. Mommy works in a business called a strip club and dances for people and tells them jokes, gives them hugs, and gets tipped money for doing so because bodies are interesting and beautiful and people will pay money to appreciate them because companionship is important. When she's older, I'll explain to her that I've worked with people's bodies and genitals. I've been paid for sex and I've earned money from having conversations and filming myself masturbating or even stepping on cigarettes. I will explain to her that some of this work was legal and some of it was not. And she does her spiel about how porn is positive, it's for creativity and body image, all that garbage. Now, there's a comment on this article from Mr. Alan Wood, LOL, which is pretty telling. He goes, she's working, she's not victimizing anyone, she's not living off the people's labor, she's got nothing to feel bad about, and I'm pretty sure she's laughing at some of the comments on here. Typical, white knight style, probably liberal male. Live and let die, who cares, she's not affecting anyone. Well, yes, she is, because she has a kid. Yeah, sorry, that's a little detail you guys like to leave out. And I've spoken in the past about whether we should have a conversation about certain people being allowed to have kids, or at least more specifically, being allowed to raise kids. Now, if you bring this up, invariably you have that crowd of people, they strip themselves naked, they get one of those Cafe Press Constitution towels and dance around, flossing their private areas in full view. But it doesn't solve, or it doesn't sort of dismiss, as they're attempting to do, this who cares argument. It doesn't dismiss a significant problem. This is child abuse. What do you think it does to the little girl's mind, her psyche, if she finds out that her mom is doing this? And doing this, by the way, when she's in the house, in some cases. Even if she's a teenager or she's early 20s when she finds this out, what is that going to do to her sense of dignity and self-respect, her ability to avoid being taken advantage of by some dirtbag? In fact, they say oftentimes people who are abused will become abusers. People who come from these weird backgrounds will be the ones who go into the same unfortunate path. And you say to the mom, she's not some undocumented woman who's living in a Nazi red state and she has no other option. Not that those even exist. She's a presumably white woman with citizenship. She in Oregon, what could she do? She could actually have a job, have a real business. She could live on welfare. I mean, there's other things that are better for your human dignity overall than being engaged with this sort of thing. Just because it's the only way to make it. That's bullcrap. I don't think there's any place in the United States where you would be forced to do this work as a citizen to make ends meet, unless, of course, it should not surprise me, she has a drug habit or her boyfriend has a drug habit that needs to be addressed. Then, yeah, I could see you would have to resort to this sort of thing. But just think about it. Think about your parent, finding out that your parent does this as a living, what that would do to your own development, your own growth, and how you would see yourself. See, this is where your actions do matter. And you can very well have a negative impact because, well, this is just my choice and it's empowering. That's fine. Then don't have kids. And certainly you shouldn't be raising kids. These kids, if you're going to have one, should be put up for adoption because you're not going to provide a healthy environment. So that's my view. I know it's easy. You don't want to have to deal with a controversial situation. You don't want to lose a friend, lose a conversation. But that doesn't change the truth.